figure if God can hear how scared I am, so can everyone else. Locke, you buying the first drink when we're done?
What the fuck are you talking about?
Halo 5 Guardians. One of the worst sequels of all time and the black sheep of the Halo series. The one that everyone hates. Creating one of the worst sequels to a beloved series with honestly an amazing community behind it. And it's honestly so sad to see, as this game honestly had amazing potential to be possibly even the best Halo in the series, and this is perfectly shown in one of the early teasers for the video game. The first teaser that we got to see from Halo 5 shows a weird dystopian looking Master Chief on this mysterious planet wearing some kind of cloak, facing off against this huge mysterious bird looking thing. And it just all feels super mysterious and something that we've never seen from Halo, and the possibilities for this type of Halo game were truly endless. Maybe Halo, at least under 343, can finally escape the legacy of the Bungie video games. And as we, the Halo fans, slowly started to see more of Halo 5 through these cryptic trailers and tons of the extra media like the podcasts and other things, we were expecting a video game to be truly awesome and amazing and something completely new to Halo. But in 2015, the game, as we all know, finally came out, and yeah, it really underwhelmed most people, if not disappointed so many of the Halo fans.
I don't like it.
The game was criticized for many different aspects, but more importantly, it was criticized because most of the marketing that was marketed for the game was honestly misleading and full of lies.
We made it up.
And that's the last thing you want your consumer to feel like that you've honestly bought a product that was honestly marketed in a way it was not intended for and that you were lied to. It's one of the worst feelings at any person, and it's understandable why so many fans thought 343 lied to them. But it being a few years later from now on, and people have moved on and actually have a new Halo game to chew on now, we finally come to a point in this series to finally get the chance to review Halo 5 Guardians. Let's just see honestly if this game is truly as bad as everyone says it is, or if it actually has some potential inside of the game to be potentially a little bit better than everyone else says it to be. Regardless though, let's lock straight face into this. After the release of Halo 4, 343 had made their attempt with Halo fans to make a new Halo game, but the reactions were much more mixed than the previous efforts behind them. Some people praised the new direction that the campaign was going to, while some people definitely criticized it, and when it came to the multiplayer, some people thought was pretty negative to just downright hating the multiplayer in its entirety, where most of the criticism for the multiplayer stemmed from the fact that the multiplayer was too similar to other multiplayers like Call of Duty, and that when 343 decided to make their next Halo game, they definitely needed to make a huge impression on Halo fans and try many new things out. So with that being said and out the way, the development of Halo 5 began, and many people left the team, and many of the team from Spartan Ops had to come over and take up the slack this time around, which will explain and further manifest itself in the campaign, with much negative results. Development for the campaign pressed on, with many ideas being juggled. For example, initially they wanted to use Fireteam Majestic, but decided to make a whole new team, as we would eventually know them as Team Osiris. The multiplayer team this time around would focus the multiplayer on a more esports direction, and they also introduced a completely scrapped mode from Halo 2, Warzone, into Halo 5. And as development progressed on the game as a whole, 343 decided to use a multimedia approach to market the release of Halo 5, which included multiple types of mediums. From tie-in comic books like Halo Escalation, from TV shows like Halo Nightfall, to even podcasts which are Hunt the Truth, which was all used to market the game and also lead up to the build-up of Halo 5's story. And after watching some of these amazing trailers, comic books, and listening to some of the podcasts, the hype was extremely there for Halo fans, and we all wanted to see this hype progress in itself in the game. And, well, as we all know, we eventually got to see Halo 5 Guardians released in October of 2015. Summary: Locke's face. As in all things in life, there are good and bad things when it comes to everything, and this is none the different like in Halo 5. And Halo 5 even has some positives, even in the campaign. Yes, I really mean it, guys, don't click off the video. There are still many small parts about the experience that I honestly do like, and before I get into the massive cons of this game, I do want to get into the pros and my thoughts on the campaign and overall game as a whole. First really positive thing I like about Halo 5 is actually the new fire team, as I generally think they're pretty interesting characters in their own right, and I feel like a solo Halo game would have served them way better than a mainline sequel. But like I said before, sadly the game doesn't really like to explain who they are or really how they form together as a team. But despite all this, I do really like the idea of the team. Heck, I even love how Buck became a Spartan. It almost feels like a natural progression for his character. And even though I'm not the hugest fan of the armor aesthetic they went with in Halo 5, I do think that all of their Spartan armors look pretty unique and interesting, and overall look pretty great as a team. And this is also the same for Blue Team, as I feel like Blue Team actually realized on screen this time around generally looks great in their armor designs. Though I do think Fred's design looks kind of stupid and Chief looks lame as hell in this game. I also think that the graphics of this game is another positive for Halo 5, as this game downright looks stunning sometimes, even compared to the more recent Halo game. Some of the graphics and cutscenes honestly look great and absolutely hold up, even better looking sometimes than Halo Infinite. And for other positives I can say about Halo 5's campaign and story, well, I guess the ambition of Halo 5's story in itself is honestly a great thing. The fact that it wanted to tell so many ideas, and even though the game horribly executes these ideas, the fact that they wanted to tell such an ambitious story is a positive in itself. And that's pretty much all the positives I can say about Halo 5's campaign and story, as there honestly really isn't that many. So without further ado, I think it's time that we transition into the cons for the campaign and my thoughts on the campaign overall. Yeah, I'm not really going to beat around the bush here, but Halo 5's campaign and story is honestly the worst in the series, at least in my opinion. But here's the question, what went so wrong, especially with the single player? Well, I'm going to present some of my reasons and why I think that is. Number 1. Dumb extra media. One of the biggest problems of Halo 5 is the fact that you actually need to do your freaking homework with this game. And you may be asking yourself, what do you mean by homework? Well, lucky for you, dumb student, 343 made an entire chart showing all of the material needed to just understand the story of Halo 5. I mean, look at all of the books and shows and all the shit that you need to understand just to understand the beginning, just to start out with Halo 5's campaign and story. This whole idea is seriously messed up and extremely bizarre. For one thing, this whole idea alienates so many gamers and casual Halo fans from playing Halo 5 to begin with, because really at the end of the day, you're only appealing to 1% of your fan base by requiring all of this extra dumb crap just to understand your story from the beginning. This whole idea is honestly pretty absurd and just so wrong. As I said before, it's not necessarily bad that they wanted to make a game for Halo fans, but this is the problem with Halo 5. This game was made for Halo nerds and not Halo fans. The simple fact of the matter is that you shouldn't need to read all these damn comics, watch all the damn shows, and all this other crap just to understand your story. Your story should have all the necessary info from the beginning needed to understand your story or movie or game or whatever. This issue honestly sounds similar to the one that we had in Halo 4, where for some reason you had to watch the terminals to understand the story of that game, which I also criticized. But that issue honestly isn't as bad as it is with Halo 5, and honestly looks kind of small compared to the massive problem that is Halo 5's canon and extra material. Halo 5 takes the whole extra material to understand your story and make it 1,000 times worse than it was in Halo 4. For example, when you start the game with Team Osiris. Now, you may be asking yourself, who the hell are these people? Well, the game doesn't bother to explain that to you. The game, for starters, would have already expected you to read up on all the material and seen all the TV shows, and this whole issue with the game is perfectly displayed by Team Osiris. What I mean by this? Well, let's go by each member one at a time. First, you got Oni Agent Locke, leader of the team. Now, you may be asking yourself, who is this? Well, you should have seen Halo Nightfall to understand the character of Agent Locke and get his introduction. Second, Tanaka. To understand her character, you would have had to read the Halo Escalation comic books to understand her. Even better! Third, Buck. First, you would have had to play Halo 3 ODST, which many Halo fans have already done this. But also to take this a step further, you also would have figured out, well wait, how did he become a Spartan in this game? Well, I'm sorry to say, poor Halo fans, but you would have had to read Halo New Blood, a book about where Buck became a Spartan. And finally, Vale. Now, if you want to know about her character, well, sorry kids, because then you have to read Hunters of the Dark to find out more about her. This whole thing is obviously a huge issue with Halo 5, and that was just the new Fireteam. I haven't even talked about the game as a whole and continuing the story from Halo Escalation, or why or who even Blue Team is. All of this is honestly just an example of Halo 5's biggest problem, of needing to be a huge Halo nerd and have read all of the books or seen all the dumb shows just to know who is who or what is going on in the story. I have never seen a story rely so heavily on outside material just to understand it from the very beginning. And honestly, this should never have been the case from the beginning. The game should have all the info needed inside of the game just to understand the game, period. And this is for every type of medium. You shouldn't have to rely too much on sequels or prequels or books just to understand your story. At the end of the day, the writers need to include all of the tools in the story to actually understand your story so that you can have an enjoyable experience. Not do homework and freaking be like Halo 5 and be annoying as hell. Number 2. Smoke and mirrors. This was a slogan said by my boy Johnson in the Halo 2 presentation at E3, and this is basically how it would describe the marketing for Halo 5 and honestly the game itself. The marketing of any video game is as important, if not more important, than the video game itself, as this is what actually convinces the consumer to buy your product. And sure, over the years, there has been marketing that have definitely maybe slightly over-exaggerated on what the final product actually was. But here is the issue. This is where I think marketing crosses the line. When the marketing starts just saying flat-out lies to the customers and just lying about what the product actually is. And this was a prime example of what Halo 5's marketing did to Halo 5 and the fan base. I don't usually discuss marketing unless it's important to what I'm talking about, and for Halo 5 I have to, because Halo 5's marketing and trailers showed a story that was completely different from what we got in the final game completely. Now, I know many people in the comments might argue with me and say that Halo 2 did this as well, but in my opinion, it did not lie to the fan base nearly as much as it did with Halo 5. And sure, maybe Halo 2's marketing was a little bit misleading in some areas, as they wanted to hide the twist with the Arbiter, and also, yes, the game, even though Chief did get to fight Covenant on Earth, yes, not the entire game was about this. But this wasn't like Halo 5, as Halo 5 straight up just lied about certain things. For example, there are no scenes of Chief in a cloak, or an insane hunt for Master Chief Orlok, and it's not even the core of the video game. Or even honestly, the Guardians, the thing in your freaking title, is not really that important or even the center of the video game, strangely enough, even though once again, it's on your title. And I will honestly admit Halo 5 had some pretty great marketing. I mean, the podcast Hunt the Truth was pretty lit, and the trailers of Locke hunting Chief as a major part of the story sounded really intriguing, and the trailers were really well done. But it sucks because the whole game wasn't like this, and it was just a huge part of the deception and lies 343 wanted us, the Halo fans, to believe in. All of it at the end of the day lied to the audience and the fan base and manipulated people, which is just so scummy and stupid in general. It really makes 343 as a really unprofessional and completely corrupt corporation, and honestly at the end of the day, marketing should reflect what the game actually is, and not ever lie to the audience like this, because once again, it will completely ruin the trust that your audience built up at this point, and many people at the end of the day won't buy your product. Overall, the Halo 5 marketing was stupid, deceptive, and full of lies. Number 3. All setup, no payoff. What I just said is honestly what I feel like with Halo 5's story, as playing it honestly doesn't feel like playing a whole new Halo story, but honestly a prequel to a real Halo story. Despite this being the real Halo game and the real sequel. So many new plot points and story ideas are introduced in this Halo 5 campaign, and it's honestly really ambitious. But at the end of the day, none of these elements are ever explained to the audience, and all clocks up to bad writing at the end of the day. This theme of having all set up and no payoff or meat is actually hugely present throughout the game and campaign of Halo 5's campaign and narrative. I can pick out so many moments in Halo 5's story where I can prove this theme, but I'm only going to pick one here, and this is when the Master Chief is by himself for the first time without Cortana. And honestly, the work for this plot point have already been done by the previous game. Halo 4 already killed off Cortana, and your setup had already been achieved by the start of Halo 5. The writers had everything planned out for them. And all Halo 5 had to do was actually explore Chief's character maybe, and also mention other issues he's dealing with. Like maybe we get to see how he was dealing with Cortana's death, or potential themes of PTSD, but nope, none of these ideas are actually brought up or really explored in any meaningful way in the Halo 5 campaign or story, which honestly was a huge missed opportunity, as I would have loved to see these conflicts and issues develop, as you could have really had a hugely great and potentially amazing Halo game here, but 343 once again missed the ball. Also, the story introduces new elements throughout it, including a new fire team, Team Osiris, and once again it acts like you already know them, but hey, whatever, we already talked about that issue. And even though, like I said before, this is a cool idea, the big problem with Halo 5 is that it really needs to develop its characters more and have us, the player, like them, learn about them more and see how they all came together. Getting to know your characters, exploring their motivations, personalities, and what drives them, you know, fleshing and developing out your characters and making for a much more interesting story. But Halo 5 once again fails at this too. So many scenes with Team Osiris feel so bare and just lifeless, as we really don't care about these characters because we really don't give time to develop them or even understand who they are.
Come a long way together. A long way yet to go.
I mean, for Christ's sakes, they kinda even made Buck lame in this game. Like, he was so cool in Halo 3 ODST, but now he's kind of an idiot. I mean, he's not exactly horrible, as he's definitely the bright spot of Team Osiris, but come on now, they made Buck lame.
I figure if God can hear how scared I am, so can everyone else.
The story also sets up the idea of the Guardians, which, you know, is in the title of your game. But here's the weird thing, we never actually really get to explore them at all, or at least in any meaningful or an in-depth way. And sure, characters in the game talk about them, and they mention a brief line of dialogue explaining what they do, which you could have easily missed, but hey, whatever. But apparently the Guardians in this universe police systems. Now, what does that mean exactly? Do they use their weird EMP ability, or they just flap their enemies to death? Honestly, who knows? The game never explains it to us. And also, what are the history of these things? I mean, how are they used in the Forerunner society, and what was their exact purpose, and maybe who built them? And all of these are really great and interesting questions, and I want to ask Halo 5, does Halo 5 actually answer all of these questions? Well, if you said they do, then I'm sorry, but you're an idiot. No, the game actually never explains any of these questions, which is so annoying, as they once again are a huge part of the marketing and on the damn title.
Odin's son! You had one job.
In my opinion, the Guardians are a great idea and should have been the Halo of this game. We should have been able to explore what they are, see what they do, and just fully explore them just like we did on Requiem or in Installation 4 from the very first Halo game. But once again, all of this is smoke and mirrors like the Guardians. Another big issue with Halo 5, and also the continuation of the theme of all setup and no payoff, was the killing of Jul 'Mdama and the continuation of the Spartan Ops storyline. Spartan Ops was the thing that 343 wanted Halo fans to play, and I was expecting after playing Spartan Ops and reading Halo Escalation and also just pretty much doing what 343 asked, we could have gotten a possibly big payoff and reward for doing all of this homework. And you know what's kind of funny? Even if you watched Spartan Ops or maybe even read the Halo Escalation comics and prepared for Halo 5, you know how 343 rewarded the Halo fans? Well, no reward.
so you get nothing!
Yep, none of it paid off. What do I mean? Well, in the first level of the game, they slapped all of the faces of the people who actually followed along with the main storyline by killing the central villain of Spartanauts in Halo Escalation. Yep, they just killed Jewel Madama and killed off any future development of the Didax Hand or the Covenant in general. Yup, and if it couldn't make a situation even worse, well, it just got worse. What I mean? Well, really simply the way he dies just makes the Didax Hand or whatever, the Covenant, so incompetent and stupid. Like, they don't even make a fight for their supreme leader. They just do nothing. Nothing. And all of this is just so dumb and stupid and so much wasted potential that could have been developed for future development of the characters or the Didax Hand in the future. But nope, all of it didn't pay off. And the final issue that I have, at least with the setup part of this video, is really the game's biggest twist. It wasn't the Guardians. Nope. Was it maybe bringing back the Didact? Nope. Or a new Forerunner villain? And no.
Wrong!
The big twist here, drumroll please, Cortana is back. And she's evil?
We made it up.
I don't know. Honestly, this idea I personally don't like for many different reasons. And sure, maybe if a great writer was attached to Halo 5, maybe I would have liked the idea and how it was approached. But sadly, Halo 5 wasn't afforded that luxury.
This one was invented by a writer.
Cortana comes back and wants to use the Guardians to dominate the universe and inherit the mantle of responsibility. But here's the issue. Why? Like, seriously, why does she want to do this? Well, the game never tells us, which is such a bad setup and also just lazy writing once again. Every good villain in a story has to have reasons for doing things he's doing, and most of the time they usually think that they're right. And this is perfectly shown in Halo 3, for example, where Truth in Halo 3 wants to use the Ark to fire the Halo rings. And you may ask, well, why does he want to do these things? As in his religion, but also in his mind, he believes that when the Covenant fire these rings, it will send them all on a worthy and great mystical journey, which honestly explains why he does the things it does and gives him good motivations and also makes him a good villain. But Cortana in Halo 5 says she wants to do all these damn things, but at the end of the day, we never know why. Sure, we can make assumptions all day, like maybe when she jumped into the mantle it corrupted her mind and maybe forced her to do these things. But at the end of the day, and the simple matter of fact is, it's all shitty and bad writing at the end of the day.
There's so much to explain. It'll be easier when we're face to face.
Try me.
There's so much to explain.
Try me.
There's so much to explain.
Try me.
In my opinion, and this may be a controversial thing to say, but I think Cortana just should have stayed dead. And maybe just let the story progress without her naturally. But sadly, this isn't the reality that we have now, and honestly, Cortana being evil now makes the other Halo games feel pretty awkward replaying them, to say the least. Like, for example, on Reach. Oh, you have to take Cortana to the Pillar of Autumn, and that noble team have to sacrifice all their members to do this to save the universe? Except not really, since Cortana is going to be the one later on to just become corrupt and want to take over the whole universe. So, sorry guys, noble team died for nothing. Honestly, I think the whole twist with Cortana being evil is just such a stupid decision and just feels like all set up and no payoff, as once again we really don't get to know the motivations of why she's doing anything in the story, and at the end of the day it really is all stupid and badly executed. Which leads into my third issue with Halo 5, which is number 4, bad writing and everything else. The final big issue that I had with Halo 5 and the story itself is simply that the game honestly has lots of bad writing. The game doesn't understand the rule of show, not tell. For example, when Blue Team lands on Genesis, and once again, all the dialogue that's spoken in this mission is of course about the mission and nothing else.
What is this place? Forerunner planet. Beyond that, who knows?
We'll learn what's going on once we find her.
This place is incredible. I wonder, have the Covenant been coming through with them? Stands to reason. Any ships caught in the slip space bubble would be pulled through.
How many years
Warden in if she wanted to.
Light bridge activated on the probe.
What was that?
Regardless though, we finally find out that Cortana is alive, and I guess that she fell into the domain and that's how she survived. Okay, sure, but I have some questions I want to ask, like how does she even get the Genesis, and well, how does this all make sense? Like, at the end of Halo 4, the Didact fell through the slip space portal and also ended up on Gamma Halo. And this doesn't make any sense, as Cortana would have also had to land on Gamma Halo for this to make sense. So, how does she even get the Genesis? And once again, this isn't even the biggest issue with this whole interaction. The biggest problem with this whole scene is the fact that Cortana, one of the most biggest characters in this series and a huge plot point of this game and a reveal, is done over radio, not a cutscene. This overall was just so lazy and a horrible idea. I think this absolutely should have been a cutscene, and once again showing us and not telling us over stupid and boring dialogue, which it's just horrible. Once again, the game fails to show the principle, show not tell. The game overall has a huge issue of telling important information in random pieces of dialogue that you might have not heard because once again you were in the middle of a firefight and it just has to tell you this information during a loud action sequence. Like, for example, critical scenes like the Arbiter's War, or Cortana, or the Guardians. All of these are revealed in lazy and dumb exposition that you might have missed. And honestly, the game needed much more of showing and explaining and not telling randomly to the audience. Also, I want to talk about the dumb action sequences, which are also a thing in this game as well. The choreography in this game is honestly so bad here, and this is usually not an issue I bring up with the Halo games, because most of the movements of the characters naturally make sense and are overall pretty awesome. And I already mentioned this dumbass scene in the first level, but the whole game has this issue. And of course, the prime example is the Locke vs. Chief fight. Yeah, I can't make a Halo 5 video without mentioning this awful and infamous fight scene, which is just so bad on so many levels. And I'm gonna explain why, at least in my opinion. Number one, these dudes are Spartans, and they should be fighting super fast and be super intense in their combat. But it ends up looking like two old guys duking it out. Like, come on now. My back! And number two, the Master Chief should have just whooped Locke for sure, because simply at the end of the day he has way more experience, and bruh, we're talking about the Master Chief here, the boy that saved the universe. Honestly, this should not have been a fight at all, and it should have just been a complete ass kicking for Locke. But at the end of the day, this overall scene is so bad, and even though yes it has one cool line,
Cortana's our concern now, sir.
Like hell she is.
This whole action sequence sucks, and is honestly a big issue of the bigger problem with Halo 5 and its choreography. And honestly, I can go on about so many other dumb scenes, like the dumb, infamous airlock scene, and honestly, it makes the Covenant, or really to be honest with you, the Didact's hand, a complete joke in this game. I mean, so many stupid things where the Covenant are involved and act like complete idiots in this game. I mean, what happened to the Covenant being cunning and smart and ruthless? They're just a bunch of idiots and clowns in this game. And overall, it's just super stupid, and the choreography and the Covenant needed way better treatment in this game. And also, I think that some of the designs in this game also completely fall apart and just look ugly as hell. Like I mentioned already, but the Covenant are a joke and look like complete ass in this game. And some of the Spartans in their new aesthetic look completely dumb. I do, like I mentioned earlier, some of Blue Team's designs, but Frederick looks like an idiot, and also I think the Master Chief looks pretty bad in this game. It's the same armor from Halo 4, but like the green is way more fainted and ugly looking. And I also think that some of the vehicles and designs of this game look awful. Like, for example, the big set piece of this game, which was the Kraken, which was basically supposed to be the Scarab for this game, except it was not nearly as fun and also equally as repetitive as the one in Halo 2. It overall was complete shit and just looks ugly. I mean, I would have expected a thing called the Kraken to look way more interesting and appealing, but just looks like a really ugly lobster you would have got from Red Lobster or something. Just looks like complete ass, and overall the design aesthetic, despite having some complete wins, has a lot of failures as well. Overall, I'm not going to beat around the bush here or really repeat anything that I've already said about Halo 5's campaign or story, but Halo 5's campaign is absolutely the worst in the series, no doubt. So many problems with the bad writing, so much setup that has no payoff, and so many completely dumb decisions makes this not only the worst Halo campaign in the series, but possibly one of the worst stories ever told in the history of video games, to be honest with you. Now, I think the gameplay in this game is actually not half bad. Yes, 343 push for more armor abilities, and in the campaign they're completely useless, but in multiplayer, they're actually really fun to use. I do like the thrusters and the ease of movements, and even though I do prefer equipment and how it was handled in Halo Infinite, honestly, I do think the movement is still pretty cool, and some of the abilities are pretty neat. All of the weapons this time around also pretty much feel the same as they did from Halo 4, but this time around they all have sights now, which I honestly personally love. Yes, it's like other shooters, but I honestly feel like it's a necessary addition, and other than that, the human weapon ammo is still scarce as hell, the Forerunner weapons are still the same meh addition to the sandbox, and the Covenant weapons are still pretty good. Overall, the weapons are still pretty good for Halo 5, and the assault rifle is absolutely perfection in this game, at least in the series. And the rocket launcher honestly looks pretty bad in design also to mention, but overall the weapons are pretty good this time around. One of the few bright spots in the game is honestly also the multiplayer. Yes, the multiplayer isn't amazing, but overall I actually had a lot of fun time, and I think that it was sadly overshadowed by the horrible campaign. The multiplayer improved by one thing, getting rid of those dumb loadouts that we had from 4, and instead embraced more Spartan abilities and less of the Call of Duty influences this time around. And yes, this sometimes makes the Halo experience feel a little too alien to old Halo fans, and honestly I do prefer the equipment like the old Halo games and Infinite. There are still a lot of fun things about this multiplayer still to mention out. Like, for example, they added one new addition in this game this time around, a new big team mode, which was Warzone. And yeah, it isn't perfect, as sometimes the map is filled with useless crap like bosses to fight and other stupid aspects, but the big team battle aspect of it, the core of the mode, is honestly still pretty decent, and overall it's a pretty decent mode, at least in my opinion. I also think that the multiplayer also has a pretty sick and amazing amount of modes to play and try out, and also a lot of the Spartan abilities, like I mentioned earlier, are pretty fun to use in the game, and I generally had some pretty fun times on Halo 5's multiplayer. But one negative thing that I'll definitely have to say about the Halo 5 experience is definitely the requisition and card packs. This was the loot crates and card system that honestly at the time were huge at the time. And these microtransactions were beginning to start and take off in the industry. This overall was a super dumb system and honestly did not need to be there. It also kind of shows 343's greed, to say the least, as well. And honestly, this whole system is pay to win and is just pretty stupid and useless, and makes the multiplayer experience sour for some people. Overall, to wrap this short summary and review of the multiplayer, I think that Halo 5's multiplayer was underrated and actually pretty fun. The Spartan abilities were fun, the map design was well done, and despite the crappy card system, the multiplayer, at least now in 2022, is honestly pretty fun and the best thing about Halo 5. For the music of Halo 5, the soundtrack was composed by Kazumi Janucci, if I pronounced that right, and overall it's decent. After listening to it in the campaign and also on my own, I would honestly like to say overall as a soundtrack, it's not as bad as the story for sure, but overall, nothing for me really standing out to say the least. Every once in a while the soundtrack has its moments, for example, but honestly there's not really a real grand theme this time around, and all of it sometimes feels like it's being blended together too much, at least in my opinion. And even though I do like some of the Sangheili themes and the high orchestral themes, overall it's not as good as the previous soundtracks, and overall a pretty good to decent soundtrack experience overall for me. Overall, Halo 5 Guardians has cemented itself in the history of Halo as the worst game in the series by far. So many things have put this game rightfully at the bottom of the list, where for example they took the story of this game and alienated so many Halo fans with it who honestly would have loved the game either way. They transformed characters once beloved into hollow or corrupted versions of themselves, and even though ambitious for sure, the campaign felt like all setup and no payoff. Regardless though, I still feel like Halo 5 definitely has its good moments, like the multiplayer, and despite having issues, actually was pretty fun overall as an experience. But honestly, the bad campaign overshadows the entire game, which I know isn't fair, but it's honestly true. Halo 5 Guardians made a sequel that honestly failed its fans and the legacy of Halo. And once again, at the end of the day, I really didn't think it was that good of a game overall. So if I had to give it a rating, of course, I'll probably have to give it a 1.5 out of 5 Jackal Snipers. After the release of Halo 5 and the huge negative reaction to the game, 343 honestly had a lot to make up for, and tons of unanswered questions to answer, and tons of loose plot threads to finish. And well, 343 did eventually make an answer to Halo 5, and that's what we'll be covering in our next video. Once again, I'm honestly pretty glad that I got the chance to make this video, and I honestly been dreading making this video, not gonna lie. But hopefully I did Halo 5 at least to review some justice, and overall I didn't make such a bad video. Once again, if you made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate everything that you do for the channel, and I really appreciate you just watching this video. I hope everyone has a good day, and once again, thanks for watching. Hopefully subscribe if you want, and I will see y'all later. Peace.
What do you think that's about? What do you think that's about? What do you think that's about?